AskReddit by Echidna C9719. What would be the daily inconveniences in a world where everyone can read each other's thoughts? The embarrassment of everyone knowing who wants to fuck them. And, maybe as devastatingly, the people knowing who doesn't want to fuck them. Poker players would have a much harder time bluffing. Elite poker players would spend thousands of hours training themselves to think of the wrong cards. Therapy becomes really difficult. I work as a therapist, and while it's important for me to be authentic, while remaining professionally distanced, there have been times where I wanted to cry or express anger after hearing something a client has been through. But if I were to engage in that sort of emotionality, it could be traumatic for the client, and it might shift the focus of the session to me, which would also be inappropriate. There's also times where I'm struggling with something outside of the therapy session. Maybe a conversation I had with my spouse, or my dad's cancer treatment. Stuff that isn't important to the client session, but might occupy my thoughts, even for a flicker of time that could interfere with a normal session. Any times where you think your patient is being ridiculous and want to roll your eyes but can't? Times where you can't say that they're the one that did the wrong thing? Hearing people's intrusive thoughts. Having other people hear yours. Mine can get quite dark sometimes. I'd hate for people to assume their chosen thoughts. People with songs stuck in their heads. People around me would be so sick of "Don't tell my heart, my achy breaky heart, I just don't think I'd understand." Hearing constant screaming. Everyone would be screaming in their head to try and block other people from hearing their thoughts. Unlike now, of course, where no one is screaming internally. Daily inconveniences. The world would fall apart. Imagine every little annoyance and gripe, every secret, everything you don't share to maintain relationships. It's all out there now. It would be chaos. Chaos during the transition period, utopia afterwards. Awkward moments when you can't pretend you're busy to avoid someone because they know your thoughts. Shopping. Oh no. There's Julie. I really can't be asked right now. I hope she can't see me. Quick, read the label and hope she spots you and pops down that aisle. Fuck, I think she's coming. Shit. She's here. Oh, hi Julie. Great to see you. She knows you're lying. She just heard you, you idiot. Julie's thought, well fuck you too. Hi queef. Deleted. That person's fashion sense adds 15 years. It's a shame about the hair, and the ears. The world would become even more superficial. Think about initial impressions essentially informing everything about a person. Whatever you initially thought about that person's appearance would immediately inform them of your core personality. How many times have you internally thought something specific about someone and it turns out to not be true, or they end up being a really good person etc. Most of these comments seems to come from the perspective of we suddenly can read each other's thoughts. I read the question more along the lines of what would it be like if we've always been able to read each other's thoughts. In other words, we're born that way and used to it. In that situation I'm not sure there would be any inconveniences. Waiting in line with a racist. I wonder if there would be racists in a world where everyone's personhood is forced onto you at all times. I bet there would be very different prejudices than race based on thought patterns and stuff. HR would become the busiest place in the company. Bob, we've discussed this before. You can't just sit around all day thinking about what Grace looks like naked. Think in Russian. Firefox. No more surprise parties, everyone knows what you're planning. Divorced breakups would be either much more prevalent or much less prevalent. The invasion of privacy. God, I don't like to show parts of me to my family. Can you imagine that? You cannot even think things without being judged. On the flip side, authenticity would not be a problem anymore. No password or PIN code would be really safe. I never just think of my PIN, but as soon as I read your comment it started flashing in my head. Other people's mental illness or nightmares. It would be a nightmare for someone who copes with depression on the daily. Being able to hear so many people talk about you from inside their heads could feel like you're drowning if it gets too overwhelming, especially if those thoughts are negative, which is almost a guarantee. So it's easy to think this would be the case, but it absolutely wouldn't. Depression makes us think that we're being judged and deemed unworthy by everyone around us, but in truth, they don't care. Unless they are like judgy teens, they could not give a shit. They have their own lives to worry about and are not paying attention to others. 75% of the population would gang up and kill the other 25%. Repeat and repeat until society collapses. Society would collapse after the first iteration. A mild inconvenience? It would be really irritating to hear people trying to spell words. I just wouldn't leave the house. I have OCD and I dread to think what would happen if people could read my thoughts. Lol. I think people would be terrified of each other. The horror of television shows and movies and books being constantly spoiled. What an awful fucking agony. Dart. And of course all of the constant murdering. Very inconvenient.